Hi there, Buick owners. Today in your 2016 Buick Envision, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install Roadmaster's base plate. When flat towing your vehicle, there's 5 main components you'll need to get your vehicle hooked up and safely towed behind your motorhome. You'll need your base plate, which is the connection point on your vehicle where you'll attach your tow bar to get to your RV. You'll have your tow bar, which will hook to our base plate and to the receiver on the motorhome. You'll also have your safety cables, which is a supplemental connection in addition to the tow bar. Your diode wiring, which takes all the lighting signals from your motorhome and transfers them to the lights at the back of the vehicle. And lastly, your supplemental braking system, which will take the signals from your motorhome and the braking inertia and apply the brake pedal in the vehicle when you hit the brakes in your motorhome to help you come to a safe stop. And this is what our base plate looks like when it's installed. We've currently got it in the flat toe position where our direct connect arms are inserted into the base plate. These are removable. Simply pull the pin, give it a twist, and then it pulls out, and now you've got a nice front end on your Envision that's very hidden. You can barely even tell that the base plate is here since it's so flush. And this way when you're walking by, you don't have to worry about hitting your legs on anything. But when you are ready to flat tow, simply insert the arm, push it in, and give it a twist until it locks into place. We can then repeat that process over on the other side, and you're ready to attach your tow bar to your base plate as well as to your motorhome. This base plate will accept any Roadmaster tow bar. If you have another manufacturer's tow bar, we do have adapters available here at eTrailer, so you can get those other manufacturers connected to this base plate. Right next to our base plate connection, we have our safety chain loop connection point. This way we can attach our supplemental safety cables. And just next to that on the driver's side here, we've got our mounting for our electrical connector. And it's nice that Roadmaster provides that. It really makes it so you have everything that you need right here at the front of your vehicle so you can easily get your full setup going. Now, as far as the installation goes, this is a moderate base plate. This isn't one of the more difficult, but it's also not the easiest. There is quite a few components we have to take off on the front here to get the fascia off, but once we do, there's some minor drilling as well as some minor fascia trimming. But we're going to cover it in detail so you can follow along with us and have the confidence to do it at home. We'll begin our installation here at the front of the vehicle with the hood open. We're going to remove the cover here at the top, and there are several push pins throughout the top here that we're going to be taking off. And this is easiest done with a flat-bladed screwdriver. You can also use a trim panel tool, but you'll see there'll be a small notch in each one of these, and that lets you get your screwdriver in there underneath, and then just twist it to pop up the center, and then the whole pin will pop up. If just the top comes out, no big deal. The bottom one you can get your screwdriver under and just pull it up because it's released at that point. Then these two pieces can just be pushed back together, just like that, and we're going to go ahead and get the rest removed. We can now lift this panel off and set it aside, and underneath we should have revealed some screws that we're going to need to remove using a T15 Torx. They're these ones that run along the front here. There's also right here on the very side. So we're just going to get all these out, just all the way across the front. We're now in the wheel well on the driver's side. I went ahead and turned the wheel towards the passenger side to get more room to access. But we're going to be removing the screws located up in here. There are 4 of them, and it's going to be the same size Torx socket that we used at the front. Once we get these 4 out, we'll turn the wheel the other way and remove the ones on the other side. We'll need to remove the trim piece here. Just pull outward on it, and it should just release just like that. And we only need to go that far. And then what I like to do after I pull this out, I'm going to grab a napkin or a cloth, and I'm going to shove it up in there, and that's going to hold it out. We then pull back on our fender liner here. That just pulls kind of out of there. And what this is going to do is it's going to reveal a single bolt right here, kind of at the seam, but on the inside. And we're going to remove that bolt using a 7mm socket. Once we get the bolt removed from this side, we're going to peel back the trim on the other side and remove the same bolt over on the other side as well. We're now underneath the vehicle, and we're going to remove all the bolts from along the bottom here across the front. There's one right behind the little splash guard here, so you want to make sure you get that one. There's a total of 10 all the way across, using a 7mm socket. Now starting on one side, we're going to grab our fascia, and we're just going to start to peel it out, just down till we get to about the corner of the headlight there. That's a good point to stop. And then we're going to go release the other side that same amount. Now that we've got both sides released, we're going to come back to the center here, and there are these little prongs here on the top that hold it into place. We were using those to keep it from falling off. Now we're going to come up and pull up on each one of those. There's one here on the ends, and then each one of these kind of has a little prong right there raised up that it rests on. So we just got to pull it up over that prong. Sometimes lifting up on it like this helps. And then now we're just going to go straight away from the vehicle. But we do want to be careful because we do have some electrical connectors that we will need to disconnect. That's found over here on the passenger side. We're going to first release the red tab by pushing it away. Then we can press in on the release connector, and then we can go ahead and pull them apart. Now it's pretty normal, it's going to slide off of the clip there. So you can kind of rest the fascia underneath your arm so you can get two hands in there. Press down, and then pull them apart. We can then take our fascia and set it aside where it won't get damaged. We're now going to remove the air dam that's located right here. There's 4 pins along the top we're going to take off. We're going to use a trim panel tool for these ones. And I like to get behind the whole plastic piece. And then you can just pry it out like that, and it'll just pop out of there. We're going to do the same thing for each one of these across the top here. Then we're going to remove the side ones. These are more like the ones that we had up top. So these ones are usually easier with the flat-bladed screwdriver because you can easily fit it into that little notch. And then they're just going to pop out just like they did up top. There's one over on the other side as well. Now that we've got all those loose, the only thing holding it on here is just this rubber piece at the bottom. And these actually just pull off of here, so just pull these pieces off. And then there's also 2 more clips right down here at the bottom. We're going to use our trim panel tool once again to get back behind those, to pop these out. And then we can set this piece aside. We now need to trim flush along the bottom of the bumper beam here through these brackets. There's one on each side that we're going to be cutting through, and you can use a cutoff wheel or a reciprocating saw. We're going to be using a small reciprocating saw for ours. And then we'll just cut the other side the same way. Now that we've got that cut off, there is a sensor here that we'll need to remove. You can see the little prongs here. So if we just press in on the prongs, it'll pull out of there. There's the 3, just push in on those. Next, we're going to be taking off the assembly here. There are 5 bolts down here at the bottom we're going to remove, and 4 across the top. These are all going to be a 7mm socket. Keep an eye on your horns as they are connected to one of those bolts. You might want to just set it aside when you take those loose. The centerpiece is going to come out of there, so just move that out of the way. And now we got those loose. On top, it's got just like that panel down below. It has just the little rubber pieces that you just got to disconnect here. So those guys just pull off of there. Sometimes it's easier to kind of pull it down like this in order to get those to release. And then at the bottom here, running up the back side, we have our electrical connector to our motor. You can see there's a small red tab there. It's a little easier to use a screwdriver to pop the red tab up. Then we can press in to disconnect the connector, and we'll set the assembly aside. We'll now need to disconnect our wiring from here, and each of these pins here, you can see it's got two little tabs. If you just take a pair of pliers and squeeze those, it'll easily just pull right out of there. Now we need to be completely disconnected because we are going to be taking this beam off. So these ones up here, we'll need to disconnect those as well. Those ones are easier with the trim panel tool. The pieces we had just pried our wiring out of now we need to remove. There's a pin here, just like the ones from up top. So we're using our flat bladed screwdriver, pop out the center, and we'll take the whole pin out. And then the entire assembly, you kind of got to pull to the side first like this to release this outer clip. And this just comes off, we'll set it aside and remove the other side also. We can now remove our bumper beam. There's 4 bolts on each side, so we're just going to go in the access hole and use our 13mm socket to remove those. What I like to do with one of the bolts when I remove them is to just thread it back in a couple of turns. And this will just make sure that when I go to take out the other side, there's still something to hold this up so it can't just fall off on me. Now I'm going to take off the other side. And once you've removed the last bolt on the other side, you can then just support that side, walk over to the other side, take out that last bolt. And then we'll set our beam aside. It looks like we did miss one clip there on the back side. So we're just going to grab our trim panel tool and pop that one out that we had missed. We'll now need to remove the clips that are located here on the intercooler. And these ones we'll use our trim panel tool to remove. Get behind those clips and pop them out of there. There's 2 just like this over on the other side that we'll also need to remove. If these clips are difficult, you can do the trick we did before. We went behind the entire plastic to get them out because sometimes it can be difficult to get just behind the clip. We'll take the 2 out in the same location on the other side. There's also one up here that we're going to need to remove. And this is that other style of clip. And of course on the other side there is one just like this in the same location. Now just on the side of the frame where we'd remove the bumper beam here, you're going to have some electrical connectors. We're going to need to get those guys out of the way. So just get behind them with your trim panel tool and pop those clips out of the frame. There's going to be one on the other side as well. That was the connector we had disconnected when we took the fascia off. Get that clip out and make sure that wiring's free from the side of the frame also. Next we're going to be removing the brackets located right here. There's 2 bolts that go into the frame and 1 into the kind of fender liner support area there. The smaller ones we'll use an 11mm socket, and the larger one we're going to use a 16mm. We can then just go ahead and remove these and we'll set our bracket aside. We'll take the one out located on the other side as well. We're going to be lifting our base plate into position momentarily, so I find it easier to have your hardware prepared. The 12mm bolts, which is the medium diameter bolts you're going to have in your kit, you want to make sure you got your flat washer and lock washer on it just like this. And the thicker bolts that comes in your kit, the 14mm, you want to have a lock washer on those. You'll have 2 of these and 2 of these, and all the rest of the hardware that comes in our kit, we're going to be using red Loctite on now to secure them. So just having this prepared is going to make your life easier when lifting up your base plate, so you can just grab one of these prepared assemblies and thread it in. And now this is easier if you have an extra set of hands. We're going to lift it into position, pull out on our wiring because we don't want to pinch any of that between the frame and our base plate. And we're going to line up the holes here in the side with the factory holes where we had removed that brace previously that was located over here. And then take the hardware we prepared, the larger bolt's going to go in top. And we don't want it all the way tightened down yet. We need it to be loose so that way we can adjust our hitch around. So I'm just going to be threading it in about hand tight there. And then the same with this lower bolt with the smaller bolt that we had prepared. The same hardware is going to go in over on the other side. Now we've got our base plate in position. We've got to drill out the remaining holes. There's 4 on each side that we're going to have to drill out, and they need to go into the pinch weld that's located on top and on bottom of the frame there. So what I've done to make things a little bit easier is I lifted up on the base plate until it was parallel with the frame on both top and bottom, and then I snugged these bolts down just enough to where it's going to hold the base plate in that position. We are likely going to have to loosen these up later because there's spacers we're going to have to fit in here, but at least it'll hold it steady for you so you can drill out the holes and have it properly lined up. And then just going to take a 3/8 drill bit, we're going to go through and we're going to drill out each one of these holes. We're now going to prepare our hardware for the holes that we just drilled out. These are going to be the remaining bolts you have. You're going to have 8 of them. We're going to have a lock washer and a washer on them. And then each one of these is going to get red Loctite as well. So it's good to have these prepared as well. It just makes your life easier. We can now take our bolts. We're going to slide through the base plate. And then we're going to also go through the spacer. That comes included with your kit. Through the other side. And then place our nut. And now we're just going to repeat this for all the remaining holes. We can then go back and tighten and torque all of our hardware to the specifications found in our instructions. We can now start reinstalling the components that we had removed. We're going to be putting the bumper beam back on as well as the plastic trim that we had taken off up here. So you need to move your wiring out of the way and just line your bolts back up and reinstall your bumper beam here. So to make sure we're not pinching any of our wires while we're doing this. When reinstalling your bolts, a lot of times it's easier if you just take a socket and just start them by hand, because you don't want to use your gun because you might accidentally cross thread it. This way you can ensure that you get them in there and get them all started. Now that you got to tighten down, you can take all the clips that we'd removed and put your wiring back in. We can then put our air dam here in the front, our louvers. Make sure you plug the motor back in. It's kind of hard to see it because you kind of have to have it tilted towards the setup there in order for the cable to reach. And we can flip it over. And we're just going to line up our hardware where it goes. Remember, some of the tabs poked into the rubber here up top, but our main concern is getting our bolts back in. So we're going to get it lined up, get a bolt in the top on each side, and that'll hold itself up so the little clips and stuff, you can start lining those up. We're going to go ahead and get the bottom one started here. Now you do want to keep in mind that the upper bolt is where our horn went. So just make sure you grab your horn and put it in place before putting the bolt in. And your middle piece here, you can set that back into position. It just connects to the top here, right below your hood latch release lever. And then it'll poke down through the plastic and line up with the threaded hole on your bumper beam down there in the middle. We can then tighten them back all down with a 7mm socket. The ambient temperature sensor that we had removed from the piece that was down in this location is not getting reinstalled, so we're just going to take the open loop here on the rubber component, and it just pokes right up in there and it'll clip right into that spot. Now that we've got all these components reinstalled, our base plate installation really is complete. At this point, it's just reinstalling the fascia in reverse order of how you removed it. There is some trimming that we'll have to do for our components to pass through, and I'm going to be showing you that. Before we get to that, I highly recommend you take a pause from your base plate install and complete the rest of your flat toe setup, because while our fascia is off, we're going to have a lot more room to work, so it's going to be easier to install your diode wiring, your braking system, and any other accessories that you are planning to do. So I'm going to go ahead and complete the rest of those, and then we'll come back and get the fascia back on once those are completed. On our fascia here, in order for the arms to pass through, we do need to make some minor modifications. I've gone ahead and marked out the area that we're going to need to trim out so our arms can pass through. And then you can either use a rotary tool, you could use a small handsaw or a little reciprocating saw to get in here and make these cuts. You can find the outline that I drew out here in your instructions that come included with your base plate. And of course we did the same thing over here on this side, and if you've got any rough edges, you can take a file to clean those up, and then just knock off those edges and help make it look nice and smooth again. And then if you had any marks left behind, you can just use some alcohol on a rag to wipe those off. Now that we've got our fascia trimmed out and we've got the rest of our flat toe components installed, we can reinstall our fascia in reverse order of how we removed it. Now you can see here the mounting location for our wiring is able to pass through the fascia, but our electrical connector here is going to need the wires to pass through, and this is going to be in the way. So we are going to have to trim this area out. So just check around there to see if you do need to trim. We're going to trim out just this section right here between the two bars, so that way our wire can pass through. And that should give us plenty of room there. Since it is kind of curved up here, I'm just going to go ahead and trim off on the sides, and that'll just give us a better look. Our connector is going to hang out just a little bit on the outside of this, so it should cover a lot of that up. And that completes our installation of Roadmaster's base plate on our 2016 Buick Envision.